All right, I'm back with some questions. Let's go. Here we go. All right, what's a tiny invisible detail in your films that no audience member has ever noticed but you're irrationally proud of? A tiny invisible detail in your films that no audience member has ever noticed but you're irrationally proud of. You know, I did a short film called Duel of the Dyad about 5 years ago. It's not great, but in it it's basically it was kind of a reimagining of the fight between Rey and Ben on the remnants of the Death Star in that big ocean. And I didn't want to do any like digital ocean, so I built an automaton, and the is the automaton. It's like the making that, and you only see it for a little bit. I mean, you do see it, so maybe it is noticed, but the amount of work that went into making this automaton just to be kind of a layered element was a lot. Has there ever been a mistake in the animation that you chose to keep because it made the scene better? Has there ever been a mistake in an animation that you chose to keep because it made the scene better? Well, stop motion's full of mistakes, so I don't even view, a traditional way to look at I don't view mistakes as actually mistakes, it's just part of the medium. But I've made plenty of mistakes that are in the scene that I didn't intentionally keep in there. If you go watch the Iron Giant holiday message video that we did for Mondo like 6 or 7 years ago, you can see one of the rigs that holds the Iron Giant up as it's walking through this tree forest. It's crazy, and I don't know how it ever got past me before I published it, but it got past me. And just go watch that video. It's very clearly in the frame. So anyway, there's one. If you had to make a film using only one material for the rest of your career, what would you choose and why? This question kind of prompts me to think, what kind of puppets would I use? How would characters look? We use tons of different materials. We did this stop motion Travel Oklahoma spot a few years back, and the world style was all felt. That was fun, but I'm kind of felted out. I don't really want to do more of that, at least not for a while. Silicone puppets are great. They're very. I'm not really answering the question though. What medium would I use? What medium, is that what it says? One material. Does silicone count? I feel like we can make everything with silicone. And you could even get silicone or like a plastic that we can 3D print. I don't know. I'm not really. This question stresses me out. What's the most emotionally difficult scene you've ever animated? Not technically, but personally. I don't think I've ever had an emotionally difficult scene that I've animated. I haven't had enough animation experience, narratively speaking, to feel like it's difficult to get through. This would be a great question to ask some of the animators that we've brought into the studio who have tons of experience animating. So I'd be curious to ask a handful of other animators what their answer to this is. But when I think of the question, just trying to pull something emotionally out of something I've animated, there is, speaking of the Travel Oklahoma gig, we did a little vignette, which is just like a short 10 to 15 second animation featuring some of our puppets. And the scene that we set up was a dad and his daughter at a lake, and they were fishing. And it was just simple. The daughter was fishing. He's got his arm around her, and then there's a sweet moment where they lean into each other, and there's the sunset. And I definitely I called dibs on that animation because I wanted that was clearly me and my own daughter. And so it was fun to animate, and I felt like I was projecting myself into that scene. And it just resonated with me because I live in Oklahoma. I like to fish. My daughter likes to fish. So it was something that we've done together, and it's kind of cute and delightful. So yeah, I'd say that one. If budgets and time were unlimited, what's something you still wouldn't change about how you work? Boy, if budgets and time were unlimited, I mean, I tell people if somebody, I just love, I love what I do. I love the studio. I feel so fortunate that I get to come into this creative space and work with other creative people. and if somebody were to come in and say, hey, Mason, here's $3 million, do whatever you want with it. I mean, I wouldn't go on vacation. I mean, maybe I would because I'm a little bit stressed this season, but I would ultimately invest that into what we're doing here, continue doing more original content, and put that towards the production of a feature film that is the ultimate dream, So what's something you still wouldn't change? Yeah, I wouldn't change. There's not a lot I wouldn't change. I am doing what I want to do. Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. Okay, 5 more questions. Here we go. What's a project you turned down that was financially tempting and why? The only projects, there's projects that I turned down that are financially tempting. The only ones that I've turned down plenty of projects, largely because the budget wasn't there. But there have been projects that the budget was good, but there's a huge live action portion to the brief. And while I can, and while we have done live action stuff in the past and tried to marry it with stop motion, if the project is like 90% live action and just a little bit of stop motion, I typically will say that's outside of our lane. At that point, we start venturing into territory that I'm not super proficient in, or at least in the way that I feel we offer a client in the stop motion lane. So it would be one of them was, what was it? It was Nintendo and Lego. It was a Nintendo Lego gig that promoted like Mario Legos, but they wanted like live action hands to do a lot of, it was basically like a toy commercial, and it was like, that's not us. Love to do it, but we had to say no to it. I'm glad we did, because soon after that we got another big gig that was stop motion, and so I would have been punching myself having to have been stressed out about executing this live action portion if I had then got, knowing that I would have gotten a stop motion gig also, and those things would have competed with each other. So what part of running a stop motion studio surprised you the most once you scaled? Oh, brother, how hard it is to run a business. I love stop motion. I love operating a studio. It's really fun. It's very challenging, and it's pushed me. But boy, just that, like, I'm at the top. It's sometimes I long for the old days when I could just kind of clock into work, and then it wasn't that somebody told me what to do, versus like me having to be on my game all the time to keep things going, to keep things alive. It's stressful, and I don't love that part. So, yeah. How do you price something that's inherently slow in a market obsessed with speed? How do you price something inherently slow in a market obsessed with speed? I have lots of conversations. How do I price something? How I price something is not necessarily associated with how slow it is for me to do something. And what I mean by that, I feel like this question is really getting at, hey, people are obsessed with getting things quickly. How do you make that work in stop motion? Well, I have a lot of upfront and transparent conversations with clients about the process of stop motion animation. And the clients that we work with have to be, by and large, have to be bought into the process of stop motion animation, or else it's just not going to work. That's just not going to work. But fortunately, I've been very lucky to get a lot of clients that love the medium, that in fact seek us out because they want this really tactile medium. I just talk to the clients, let them know that this is what it's all about. It's different. What's the most expensive mistake your studio has made, and what system did you build afterward? The most expensive mistake your studio has made, and what system did you build afterward? I bought a software subscription service, and I don't even want to tell you how much it costs. And out of respect for the company, because the company's not bad necessarily, but I won't say their name, but it was something that essentially enabled me to get like access to any contact or email or phone number that I wanted to. so I could like look up like a creative director at this agency, give me the direct line. I could cold call them and try to, schmooze about stop motion. So I got the service. It was wildly expensive, but I was like, you know what? If I just get 1 gig this whole year from it, it'll pay for itself. I did get 1 gig from it, but it was like very early on, so I was like hyped about it for a while because I was like, it's working. This is great. But then the rest of the year, I did not get anything. But I did do a lot of. Excuse me, I'm drinking carbonated water, so it's making me burp. Sorry. So anyway, we're talking about this software service. I basically just didn't have the time or energy. Business development and client outreach, that's something that's very draining on me. And I didn't have enough energy to both run the studio, creative direct all of the projects that we were doing, and manage employees, and utilize this software. So I basically dropped, I don't want to say how much again, but I dropped a lot of money for this that I ended up wasting. And what system did you build afterwards? My system that I built afterwards, I'm finding other ways to do business development. I'm not relying on an expensive software to give me access. Also, the way that I use AI is by using some of its research tools to help me find the right people in the industry that make sense for me to connect with, which was essentially what that service was. But I can do it for the cost of whatever, it's $20 a month for ChatGPT Pro, whatever it's called, and that's yielded better results. So, yeah. All right. If AI animation tools become indistinguishable from handcrafted stop motion, what would your competitive advantage be? AI animation tool, they are and will continue to be indistinguishable from handcrafted stop motion. Something that I like to say about what we do, it's like we don't do it because it's the cheapest option. We don't do it because it's the fastest option. We don't do it because it's the most efficient option. It's not on any of those. It is the thing that people want to see or do or experience because they just love the craft. People are seeking more ways to tell stories that are authentically human. What better way to do that in stop motion that takes handcrafted elements, props, characters, collaboration across multiple mediums. It's such a human-centric medium that's the value in it. And if you can't see that value, you're not going to be a client that wants to spend money on this medium. So that's my response to that. How do we, what would your competitive advantage be? My competitive advantage is that it's really hard to do, so there's not going to be as many people doing it. There is a million people out there, and it will continue to be telling stories through AI. And I'm not trying to crap on like AI storytelling. I think that it's the whole lane that's going to be developing over the next, the rest of our lives. It's not stop motion, and it's going to always be way easier than the work that we do in this studio. And I'm proud of that. What percentage of your success comes from artistic skill versus relationship management? What percentage of your success comes from artistic skill versus relationship management? That's a dumb question. 67%. Have you ever had to choose between keeping your team creatively fulfilled and keeping the studio profitable? Yeah, and unfortunately, it's always keeping the studio profitable. The thing is, the way I view our studio is, and the way I view really my role here and the fact that we have a studio in this wonderful space, I feel very privileged that people pay us to do what we do. Anytime we get to do work that's in stop motion, it's a privilege, and I'm so thankful for it. So the kind of attitude that I hold, at least for myself, I don't force this on other people when they work on projects here, but for myself, I like to hold, and I do hold that, like, man, I am creatively fulfilled by any work that we do here because I am hopefully building a system that can regularly tell stories through this medium and invite other artists to be a part of it. yeah, we don't have the privilege to be so picky as to say we don't want to do this type of stop motion work. We'll take it and do it all and be happy about it. Okay, a few more questions. Why does moving an inanimate object frame by frame feel meaningful to you? That almost seems condescending. Why does moving an inanimate object frame by frame feel meaningful to you? Man, growing up, whether it's through like little flip books on, sticky notes, or messing with toy dinosaurs and bringing them to life, it just feels magical. It feels like it was, ever since I was a kid, the most accessible form of storytelling. And it made me feel like I could do anything. And so, yeah, that's why. All right, a few more questions. When does craftsmanship become ego? When does craftsmanship become ego? I don't know. I feel like when does craftsmanship become ego? I think as soon as you start treating others like less than because they are not doing what you're doing or the same level or caliber of work. This is I talk about Justin Rosh fairly often because in my early part of my career, I watched him all the time and I just loved his work and I love his work. And I've had the opportunity to spend some time with him and work with him. And he is a guy that just doesn't have ego. And he could have ego because he's worked with Guillermo del Toro. He's got like maybe one of the most like money shots in the film. And it's the monkey Spazzatura, and he's like going through the circus, and it's an incredible shot. And he's worked on Leica films. He does he's just an incredible guy, and he and his wife are so humble and down to earth and supportive of other artists that I aspire to be like him in a lot of ways. And to be honest with you, everybody that I've worked with in the past in regards to stop motion has been like that. They've all been very humble and supportive and not gatekeepers. So, I think the people that have ego are the ones that are also kind of the weakest. They're the ones that feel like, oh, we need to gatekeep. We need to not share our industry secret because if you have it, then that means it's taken away from us. And really, like, the people that I've worked with, they've been the type of people that have said, hey, this is how we do it. How do you do it? And we just vibe together. So I would say when you start treating people poorly, that's when ego gets in the way of craftsmanship. All right, last one. Do you feel more like a director, an engineer, or a magician? I feel like a director 80% of the time. And by director, I mean I'm like a director of operations. I feel the only time I've ever felt like a movie director is whenever we get to fly animators in and they're actually giving puppets performances and they're asking me questions about what the character's doing. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, I need to direct. Which, most of the time, 95% of the time, I am just trying to get projects, one, funded, and then into development. And depending on the scale and scope of the project, that can be working with storyboard artists, that can be working with concept artists or art directors, that can be really trying to navigate a huge landscape of creative needs and to get us to the point where we can animate. So on the bigger projects, when we have an animator come in, I often haven't had the luxury of having a lot of the time to really, as a director, sit down and think how I want to communicate with an animator to get the performance from those puppets, those characters that I want. Honestly, at those times, I've often just like trusted that they get what I'm trying to do with this piece or with this short film. But then, I'm always surprised because there's always pushback by how, I don't know if it's lenient or ambiguous I'm being about some of the things. Because in my mind, if we fly in like a killer animator, I'm like, you got this, you don't need me. But the reality is like, well, we need you to tell us what you want what you want to happen. And so I feel like a director during those moments and those moments only. 95% of the time, I feel like a person that's doing operations for a studio. And then a magician. If I'm animating and once I hit the playback button and it comes to life and it looks good, that's when I feel a little bit like a magician, because stop motion's magic. All right, I think that's it. That's all the questions I got. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Talk to you later.